Be the ball game. 6, 5, 4, 3. They can't snap it. They can't stop it. They can't win it. Alabama wins the ball game.
Derek Thomas, linebacker, Alabama.
He was a nightmare for people that had to try to prepare for him because he had unique skills.
Just go get the quarterback. I felt sorry for some of those poor tackles that came in and had to go against him because they didn't realize what they were getting themselves into.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun. Son, I got to do better than this.
Lights out.
Sacking the cornerback is just like you devastate a city, or you cream a multitude of people. I mean, it's just like you put all the offensive players in one bag, and I just take a baseball bat and beat on the bag. So each time he came over there, I tried to tear his damn head off.
Let's play some football. Let's play some football.
The pressure is on. This is Off the Edge on Tide 100.9.
Focus on what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. Think about that. Don't think about how you feel, how tired you are, how hot it is. You got to push yourself on the field like when you're playing football.
It's my honor to present the National Championship Trophy to Coach Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide.
To me, this is the ultimate team. All these guys bought into everything they needed to do to be the best players that they could be. There's more togetherness on this team than almost any team that we've ever had. And they had to overcome and persevere so much adversity through this season, and they've done it magnificently. And I'm so proud of this group for what they've been able to accomplish and going undefeated and winning the national championship.
Streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the Tide 100.9 app. Here is your host of Off the Edge, Jacob Harrison.
Your man overthrown. Spit out the ball.
Hello there. Good morning. Welcome in to Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide Sports. Jacob Harrison here with you. Michael Bronner and a whole host of fools up there in the production studio helping us out this morning. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk to Joey Blackwell in about 12 minutes, get his thoughts on Alabama, Tennessee. Jeremy Pruitt, one of his favorite coaches, Ed Orgeron as well. We'll get his thoughts and opinions, conjecture, and all that. There, where you want more Alabama Crimson Tide opinions and thoughts and news, it's all on the Tide 100.9 app. You can listen to this show live every single day from 11 a.m. until noon right there, Apple and Android devices. But you can also get the breaking news concerning all Alabama Crimson Tide sports, not just football, not just men's basketball, all Alabama Crimson Tide sports. It's all there. It's also at Tide109.com. You can also check out the live stream of this show at Off the Edge 109 on all social media platforms. Show streams live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. It's shared to Twitter as well. And you can find everything through the Tide 100.9 socials as well at Tide 109. So, as we usually do on Wednesday, the Thursday, the day after the weekly Wednesday press conference, as is a custom in our weekly calendar, we'll go to Nick Saban's opening comments here in just a second. But, Thursdays I have to take my kids to school. So I listen to a little bit of Wimp and Barry, and then I listen to Gary on the way in. And the conversation through all 20 minutes of sports radio that I listened to this morning was the younger generation and the understanding of the Alabama-Tennessee rivalry. Well, considering, and this isn't a slight at them, I respect and am friendly with all of the hosts here. I've produced everybody's show, by the way. But as somebody who is young enough to have been fathered by anybody else that is a host on this station, I'll give you my thoughts and opinions after we listen to Nick Saban's opening comments about this rivalry and what makes it matter to a younger generation, and what what kind of gets us excited about Tennessee, and whether or not the rivalry has lost its luster after a 14-year winning streak. And there's something else within this the root of this history that I think maybe people my age and the age of everybody that's in the production studio, that we do understand and we do respect. But first, as we do, we pay respect and we listen to the wise words of Nick Saban and what he had to say to the media last night.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to an exciting game this week in Bryant-Denny Stadium. A big rivalry game for us. We got a lot of respect for Tennessee. They're playing their best football of the season. Our guys have done a pretty good job this week of, getting ready for the game. So, but getting ready for the game is just not how you practice. It's how you rest. It's how you take care of yourself. It's how you get treatment, how you eat, how you rest, everything. So, we're going to have to play our best football of the season. We're going to need a great crowd with great enthusiasm and energy that affects, the game in a really positive way for our team. That's always helpful. I would think because we're playing Tennessee and it's a rivalry game and playing at home and haven't been at home for a while, that everybody should be really excited about, this game and what we need to do to try to play as well as we can possibly play so we have a chance to be successful.
And what's the thing that you respect about Tennessee? Nick Saban really stressing that it's still a rivalry. They spent all Wednesday on the SEC coaches teleconference talking about how this is still a rivalry and talking about how he wants the fans to get up for the game and to fill Bryant-Denny Stadium and be excited for this contest, right? Well, that's kind of the funny thing, right? Is you're selling a game to a lot of 18 to 22-year-olds, a game that they haven't seen go in any other direction in 14 years, and fully expect it to continue to go in the direction it's gone well into the future. Considering Josh Heupel's doing a great job at Tennessee. I talked about that yesterday. I think he's doing a fantastic job at Tennessee. But put it into perspective. We talk a lot about how this fan base is very, very spoiled, right? And you've got the older generation that's spoiled because they've been through it twice with Paul Bear Bryant and now with Nick Saban. And then you've got a generation that all they've ever known is Nick Saban. Listen, I didn't start following Alabama football until the 2008 season. I've only known this team to be good. I've only known this team to be good. I've only known this team to beat the ever-loving you-know-what out of Tennessee. 2 years ago in Bryant-Denny Stadium with Tua going down with injury and Mac Jones not playing probably the worst he's ever played in a Crimson uniform. And all the things that bounced Tennessee's way in that game, despite them also losing their starting quarterback in that game. That's the closest I'd seen the game since Rocky Block. That's how ridiculously overpowered Alabama has been. And I've had these conversations before. Even in my, hope that college football expands and sees more parity. And we're seeing a lot of parity this year. And we'll talk about it with Joey Blackwell here in just a little bit. But even with that, it is the job of the Volunteers to get on the level of Alabama. And that's part of a rivalry. You know who's a team that I really, really, really hate right now? Cleveland Browns. And you know what's funny about that is about 4 years ago, I was saying, as a Steelers fan, man, I'm ready for the Browns to be good again so we can enjoy this rivalry again. Now I hate them because now they're good. And I think they're going to sweep my Steelers this year, and it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun. So when Gary and Wimp and Barry and most of our hosts say, well, when Tennessee does get one, it's going to hurt. You're damn right it's going to hurt, man. You're used to dominating these guys. And that's part of the rivalry. For them, part of the rivalry is getting back in there and winning a game. And if you can do it while you're bad, it's just as sweet. But when you do it, you know that you have a chance to be great once again. But this rivalry has always been like this. If you go to Winsipedia, and if you don't know what Winsipedia is, by the way, it's like the coolest thing in the world. It's well laid out, gives you the history of all these games. You go to Winsipedia for Alabama and Tennessee, and you can see the record. You know, Alabama's 57 wins, Tennessee's 38 losses, the 7 ties in this ball game. And then you can look and you can see Alabama's longest win streak is at 14 games and counting. Well, Tennessee is at 7. And when you look at the bar chart, it'll be crimson for a hot minute. And then it'll be orange. And then it'll be crimson. And then it'll be orange. This is the style of this rivalry. This isn't like Alabama and Auburn. Okay. Auburn has been consistently, for the most part, good enough to catch Alabama off guard, especially when they're at home. We have to stop comparing that rivalry to Alabama and Tennessee. LSU has been consistently good enough to play Alabama extremely close, but they're 1-10, or they're going to be 1-10 over the past 11 years against Alabama by the time the season's over, right? All 3 of these rivalries operate differently, but everything evolves and changes. Once upon a time, this was the key rivalry, as I'm told. But things will change. And one day it's going to be Tennessee because LSU's on the way down. Auburn's still riding, trying to see if they can hold on to a wave of consistency despite a lot of inconsistencies in who's being the head coach there over the past couple decades. But all things being considered, I think, I can't speak for an entire fan base, right? I am 27, I am still a little bit older than a lot of the, students that go to Alabama. But don't think that, we're not just as excited to play Tennessee and not just to smoke a cigar, but because you're supposed to beat them. It's part of the rivalry right now. And if you lose, then first of all, it will reignite the rivalry in a different way. But right now, half the fun of the rivalry is bullying and laughing at them for how terrible they are, and laughing at them because they can't even get to a point to enjoy some success. They can't get to a point where they're in a ball game with the number 13 team in the country and a bad call goes against them. Despite not being relevant for the past 10 years, Tennessee still throws a hissy fit just because they don't get a call in the 4th quarter. That's part of the rivalry, is being flabbergasted that there was a mustard bottle on the field and they threw a golf ball at the last head coach that they had that had any semblance of success. That's part of the rivalry. Bullying somebody in football, don't be a bully in real life. Bullying somebody in football, that's part of a rivalry. As somebody who's been on the Tennessee side of a rivalry, right? My big rivals in high school were Daphne and Spanish Fort. They beat the tar out of us every year. Every year. But and this year, my alma mater played Spanish Fort pretty closely. They don't play Daphne anymore, but they did go on and beat another team that used to beat the tar out of us too. So you're able to gain that confidence and spark up a rivalry. Because it's not just about being back and forth. It's about the respect and the animosity and how they're weighed. LSU's a bit of a rival because of the respect factor. Auburn's a rival because their little brother trying to punch up. Tennessee's a rival because you hate them. So hate them. Relish in their mediocrity and enjoy it when Alabama kicks their ass this Saturday. That's what I think about the rivalry as a millennial, as an under 30. It's fun. Let's enjoy it. And we'll talk to Joey Blackwell about it next here on Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama sports.
With 24/7 customer service and guaranteed repairs, your Progressive policy works the way it's supposed to. Unlike this stressful meditation guide.
Take a deep breath. Focus on all the things you have to do. Did someone make the vet appointment yet? You don't know? That feels like something you should know.
Switch to Progressive today.
You are a mess.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Repairs through Progressive Network Shops guaranteed for as long as you own or lease your car.
Ask big.
Have you seen our artisan-created diamonds? If you've been in a room with one, you can't miss it.
Tom Osmond from Fincher and Osmond.
It's a diamond like I've never seen.
And he's seen a lot of diamonds.
Ask big.
At Fincher and Osmond, you can put artisan-created diamonds side by side with mined diamonds. When you see it,
more importantly, when she sees it,
FincherandOsmond.com.
McFarland Boulevard between Edgar's and Local Roots.
Everything is better at Benton Nissan. At Benton Nissan of Bessemer and Benton Nissan of Hoover, you get an even bigger selection. We have more than 400 used cars on the ground. Don't pay above sticker for new cars when we have like new used cars waiting for you. Drive a little, save a lot at Benton Nissan of Bessemer, 5487 Academy Way, and Benton Nissan of Hoover, 1640 Montgomery Highway. Benton Nissan, your friend in the car business. For qualified customers, see dealer for details. Everything is better at Benton Nissan.
Tuscaloosa Tire and Service, they've got the big brands you know and trust. Goodyear, Firestone, Bridgestone, Cooper, and they can finance for you as well. When you need routine maintenance and alignment, a tune-up, whatever it is, belts, hoses, just basic stuff, or when you don't know what's wrong with your car, truck, or SUV, make it Tuscaloosa Tire and Service. They're dependable, they're trustworthy. That's why they've lasted for over 36 years. Skyland Boulevard, McFarland Boulevard East in Northport on Lurleen Wallace Boulevard. Check out the website, TuscaloosaTireandService.com.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Mostly cloudy this afternoon. We'll maintain the chance of a few passing showers and thunderstorms through the evening hours. The high today 78, tonight's low 52. Tomorrow and Saturday, the sky's sunny both days. The high tomorrow 76, the high Saturday 79. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 76 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Follow Off the Edge on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for live streams and instant analysis. Off the Edge with Jacob Harrison continues.
Back here on Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide Sports. Jacob Harrison here with you, Michael Bronner, Palmer McCall, Joe Gaither, all hanging out in the production studio, helping us out this morning. Alabama, Tennessee hate. Who better to discuss it, break it all down than our guy, Joey Blackwell, beat writer for Bama Central, the Sports Illustrated affiliate of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Joey, what's going on, man?
Storm we had this morning. It was pretty brutal over here in Birmingham, I'll tell you what.
Uh-oh. That's not good. That's not good. Stay dry.
Just lightened up. I was finally able to take the dog outside. So everything's all right now.
There you go.
How about you? How you doing?
Doing all right, man. Counting down the minutes to Saturday where we'll be able to light up a cigar, honestly. I mean, Alabama and Tennessee, that's one of those writing on the wall kind of games, but I'm kind of curious. I didn't write down this question, but we're both, in the younger crowd of Alabama media, and there's this perception on how younger fans kind of view the Alabama Tennessee game. I just spent the last, or the first, 15 minutes of my show kind of breaking down how I see it. How do you view the Alabama Tennessee game?
Well, I'm a good 5-6 years older than you, last I checked. And, I think, but I think you and I are still both part of the generation that still, grew up in a time where Tennessee and Alabama was kind of back and forth every year. Alabama and Tennessee is a kind of a streaky rivalry. And prior to this Nick Saban streak that we have going on right now, Tennessee was was winning almost every year. And if you look at an all-time record sheet, you'll see a streak of crimson and a streak of orange. It kind of goes back and forth. And for me personally, I grew up in Birmingham. My mom and dad were huge Alabama fans, and so being born in '91 and being raised in the '90s, back when Tennessee was at the top of their game, I still have that sense of the rivalry. But I can also understand, if you're born in 2000, 2001, and are currently a student at the University of Alabama, I can understand, when if you're born in 2000, you're 7 years old when Nick Saban gets that first win. And so you might not remember a lot before you were 7 years old, and you only remember success against Tennessee. So I can see, that kind of luster being lost. I actually talked about it yesterday in a story I wrote for our site. And I mean, I can understand why the older generation would think that people, younger fans might not appreciate the rivalry as much as they do. But at the same time, I think there are fans that still can't appreciate it. I'm turning 30 in just a couple of weeks here, and I seem to appreciate it. But I don't know if I necessarily qualify as being called young anymore at this point.
Hey, I'm 27. I'm just hanging on for dear life right now. So, I mean, we're doing what we can. All right. So getting to the on the field stuff, and you and I share, pretty similar thoughts on the status of this rivalry. But a guy who had a massive, massive game against Mississippi State and kind of needs it to continue to kind of live up to the expectations that were placed before him. And that's big number 31. That's Will Anderson, who, he's taken the leadership stance in the press conferences and shown, growth as a leader through that. But now on the field, getting 4 sacks against Mississippi State, if he can continue that stride, then he can be set up for something really special, right?
Yeah, and I think that's something we could definitely see him repeat this week. I mean, 4 sacks is a lot. You might not go that high in the sack department, but this Tennessee team has really struggled with protecting their quarterback all year. The perimeter on the line is not very strong. They've succumbed to blitz on more than one occasion. I mean, we saw Hendon Hooker go down with the injury late in the game and last week, and Joe Milton even gets popped a few times. They have a hard time keeping defenders from popping their quarterbacks. And when you put a guy like Will Anderson on the edge and his speed and his ability to get around the end, that's the recipe for not a great day. And I think that Will Anderson can definitely, repeat what he did past week. I mean, he's been consistently, no question, consistently the best defender on the Alabama defense all season long so far this year. I think that he's going to keep that up this weekend.
There's no doubt about that. It's more or less the stats to be able to quantify it allows people to see it a little bit more clearly. But you mentioned the quarterbacks with Hendon Hooker. I mean, he's practicing, but Josh Heupel is not. He's not a glass pane. Like, he's a brick wall when it comes to injury status. He's not giving anything away. And Joe Milton, we saw how he closed the game out. He ran out of bounds on the last play of the game. He's shown a cannon arm, a lot of inaccuracy too, though. And Harrison Bailey's still on the roster. He was a guy that they had a lot of hopes for when he joined the team. What can Tennessee do at the quarterback position to kind of boost their chances to stay even with Alabama? Because this is probably the best chance they've had in a while to kind of, stay pace a little bit at least.
Yeah, well, Tennessee's best hope is that their offense keeps on rolling. I know people don't really talk about Tennessee because of their record, but, it took a while to get going this season, but then it's like a bomb went off. They ran for close to, I think they ran around 460 yards against Missouri. They had a well-balanced win over South Carolina. They had 467 yards against Ole Miss. They've hit, one fun fact that I saw this morning was, they've hit at least 200 yards rushing and passing in 4 of the last 5 games, which is pretty impressive and it's very well balanced. But the problem is that now they're going against an Alabama defense. But I think that one of the things that they have going for them is that they're and Saban has mentioned this a couple of times this week, is that they're very, very fast paced. And you combine that offensive speed and that quickness, you're gonna have a a decent day. This is an Alabama team that has struggled against fast tempo offense and getting set. They've had poor communication when they're having to be driven down the field. But fortunately, on both of those games that they had poor communication, they were also dealing with an away team, crowd, and they're not having to deal with that this week on defense. So we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see how it goes. But I think that in order for Tennessee to actually have success, to go back to answer your original question, is they need to keep that fast tempo and grind it out, which is something Texas A&M was able to do fairly effectively. But unfortunately for the Volunteers, Tennessee ain't Texas A&M. I don't know if they can sustain that level of tempo after getting just beaten every single down by an Alabama defense.
That's probably the case. I contend if you can mix together what you're saying, because I agree with the fast tempo, but if you can run the ball effectively, it might not matter who you have at quarterback. I don't think anybody had Zach Calzada beating Alabama on their bingo cards.
And that's a very valid point. Hendon Hooker has made this offense very effective, but Joe Milton has been, he has a lot of tools and upside, but he hasn't been that accurate. He's very inconsistent. But we were saying the same things about Zach Calzada heading into the A&M game. So, it's one of those situations where this is a rivalry game. You can kind of just throw that stat sheet out the window and see how things land. That's a very good point you just made.
Yeah, I mean, that's a cliche with rivalry games. You can throw it out the window. It's who can get up for the game, and if a lot of these older heads talking about how the younger generation doesn't appreciate the rivalry. If Tennessee gets up for the rivalry and Alabama doesn't, that can lead to a lot of crazy things happening. Looking at Alabama's offense, I don't know why, but I feel like there's another step that this team can make offensively. Now, that's not to say that they're playing badly or anything of the sort. I mean, Brian Robinson and Jameson Williams are playing ridiculous football right now. Bryce Young is doing his thing. He's a Heisman contender. But I feel like there's something more that this offense can give. Do you have a thought as to maybe what that could potentially be, or are you pretty pleased with how the offense stands going into the second half of the season?
Well, I have a couple of things that I think they can improve on. First and foremost, there needs to be more consistency in the wide receivers. They've had way too many drops this year. And fortunately, John Mechie finally had a solid game this past, people have been kind of wondering where he's been, and he finally showed up this past week and had an effective performance. Combine that with Jameson Williams, I think they could do well. I think that's something they can improve on if they keep that momentum, going forward. I think we also need to see more, other receivers, and not just Mechie and Jameson. We also need to see Trayshawn Holden step up. We need to see more out of Slade Bolden. He's had some pretty rough drops here and there. I'm also curious as to where the tight ends have gone, because early on this season, Bryce Young targeted his tight ends a good bit, and we really haven't seen much from them over the past couple of weeks. So if they can implement the tight ends back into the game and make them effective like they were the first couple of games, and then also, kind of spread the ball out a little bit, when Bryce is passing it to wide receivers, I think that'll be a big help. This offensive line has done overall a decent job this season, but this isn't the offensive line that Alabama had last year that was the head and shoulders the best in the nation. They are having some struggles. Chris Owens has had his own struggles. The only really guy that's been incredibly consistent has been Evan Neal. He's been playing solidly, but Evan Neal's also probably a top 5 pick next year. So you can kind of put him to the side and then talk about the rest of the offensive line. But this offense is far from perfect. It's not the offense that Alabama's had the past couple seasons. That being said, when you have effective guys like Jameson Williams and Bryce Young and Brian Robinson finally stepping up and having a couple of really good games in a row here, I think this offense is on the up and up. It's just about ironing out those kinks for the rest of the season.
No doubt about it. We're talking to Joey Blackwell at Blackwell Sports, the Bama beat writer for Bama Central, the Sports Illustrated affiliate of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Joey, starting to look more nationally. Last night, Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, they fell to Appalachian State. Now, we're not going to talk about two Sunbelt teams, doing what Sunbelt teams do, and that's, have great football games and have great upsets. But it's more of a who's next to fall. We've seen great parity in college football this year. I've appreciated it. But when you're looking, you see Georgia, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma at the top of the pack, You've got Michigan and Michigan State sprinkled in as undefeated. But even some one-loss teams that are still on upset alert to possibly have their season derailed. Who do you think is next to fall in college football this season?
I think, if we're going solely based off of, the top 10, I think Oklahoma has a pretty big shot of going down to OK State. I think that OK State's got a really good team this year. I think they could possibly take down, the Sooners and kind of jump up in the rankings a little bit. I could see Ohio State losing to Michigan. That could be a tough game, or vice versa. One of those teams has to fall. They're right next to each other in the rankings at 5 and 6. So, one of them could fall. But also, by the way, who would have picked that Appalachian State could upset a big team? You'd never see that, would you?
Hey, that was their first win against a ranked team.
Whenever I see Appalachian State on a team's schedule, I immediately circle and like, okay, that's a trap game.
Well, that was actually their first win against a ranked team since that big win at Michigan.
Yeah,
kind of surprising. I didn't expect to read that this morning.
Really? Okay, I didn't know that either. It seems like Appalachian State, every time they're playing a big rate, seems like they play them. But what do I know? But yeah, so I think Oklahoma has potential to lose to Oklahoma State. I think this Oklahoma team has really had a lot of problems this year, but now they have a new quarterback. They are looking better. So we'll see how that goes. But I would pick them, or obviously one of them has to lose between Ohio State and Michigan.
So that leads into a much more hot take question, but I do have a feeling I know how you're gonna answer this one. Considering where Georgia stands and Cincinnati and what you just said about Oklahoma, do you think that the national champion this year will be undefeated?
Part of me says no, just because right now, if you look at the top 10, there's only a few undefeated teams left, and Lord knows I don't think there's going to be more than one team from the Big Ten in the college football playoff. Just because when you look at how it's stacked up, Georgia obviously could lose to Alabama in the SEC title game if that happens. Georgia will be a tough contest for Alabama. I'm not saying Alabama will win right now, but what I'm saying is that has the potential if this Alabama team keeps improving. Cincinnati would be could be undefeated. I think they have the best chance out of anybody to be undefeated outside of maybe Georgia. But Cincinnati, if they make the college football playoff, I don't see them beating another top 4 Power 5 team. Looking at the rest of their schedule, Oklahoma, I still think Oklahoma could probably lose the game. I don't think Michigan finishes the season undefeated, or Michigan State, because they both have to play each other. I don't think we'll see an undefeated college football champion this year unless it's Georgia. Georgia is probably the only team that has that potential. But even so, Georgia could make it to the college football playoff even if they lose to Alabama in the SEC title game. There could be 2 SEC teams in there, so it just depends on how it's structured. But I highly, it seems like teams dropping like flies every single week. I think it is possible, but I think it's more likely that we'll see a one-loss team make it this year.
I agree, and even talking about Georgia, I mean, as strong, their defense is very, very impressive. But
It's terrifying.
It can't simplify the fact that their offense has question marks. So it makes for fun college football, even with just a 4-team playoff. We're gonna see some new faces in there most likely, and it's gonna create for a lot of excitement. Now I want to go out to Baton Rouge, and I know that you've always been a big fan of Ed Orgeron, and last week we discussed this, but that was before they decided to just go ahead and announce the fact that they're going to part ways after the season. I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts as to going this direction, how it impacts recruiting, how it impacts LSU overall, and why would you decide to make that decision now instead of just making it behind the scenes and going through with it later?
Well, first things first, I'd like to have a quick shout out to Joe Gaither with you guys at 100.9. I read his story on Ed Orgeron that he did earlier this week, and it was a good read. I highly recommend everybody go to Type 100.9 and read that story. Very good perspective on the whole Coach O situation in Baton Rouge. But I think that this does affect recruiting. I think you're going to see a lot of players transfer that came in that bought into the whole you know, I mean, Ed Orgeron is a great recruiter. I mean, we've seen that time and time again. And, you know, when you buy into that program and you buy into that head coach, I think a lot of players that joined LSU maybe didn't buy into LSU. They were buying into Ed Orgeron. And when you have somebody like Orgeron leave, you're going to see those transfers. I think that basically what LSU is going to have to do is just hit the reset button. They're going to have to find another solid coach that has really good recruiting and just accept the fact that they're going to have 1, 2, 3 seasons where they're not the LSU that everybody knows. For Ed Orgeron, you know, it's kind of funny. I have a weekly SEC power ranking story on Bama Central, and it comes out every Sunday. And I wrote on Saturday night, Mississippi State game, I wrote that it looks like Ed Orgeron has possibly saved his job by defeating Florida. Well, that aged about horribly in about 24 hours. But, you know, that decision had been made before even that game had been played, apparently. So, you know, it's a tough situation down in Baton Rouge, you know, but I completely understand where LSU is coming from as an administration. Ed Orgeron, you know, while he was able to take them to their first title in over a decade, it still is, his off the field behavior has been, you know, shoddy at best. And he just hasn't really had, you know, he's had a lot of personal stuff going on, and that can obviously get in the way of a football, of, you know, coaching football. And I wish him nothing but the best. You know, I know that he has his own personal demons that he needs to work out. But at the same time, you know, there's no doubt that it's going to impact LSU for at least the next several years.
And what's really interesting, and as they begin their coaching, you know, search, is the last 3 guys to hold the head coaching position at LSU. They all won national championships with the Tigers, but nobody had to take over an LSU program that kind of sits where it does now.
Yeah.
Circling back to Tennessee, you know, they're in the news not just for the Alabama game this week, but also because Jeremy Pruitt is trying to take the fight back to the Vols. We all remember the fallout there, and we still make the McDonald's jokes or the McDonald's bags jokes. But with Pruitt, you know, coming after them from a legal stance and you know, threatening lawsuits and threatening things that would get out that would absolutely cripple the program is. I mean, he's a defensive analyst for the Giants. Like, it's not like he's not, you know, getting paid. I know he didn't get his buyout because he was fired for cause, but I mean, he can just move on and go to the NFL. But I mean, is this the right move for Jeremy Pruitt here, or I mean, or is he kind of justified?
Well, you know, I think in a way I mean, granted, you know, none of us really know the full scope of the situation. You know, nobody knows the situation like Jeremy Pruitt did. And I can't claim that I know, you know, exactly what happened, but ever since it all went down, you know, I kind of felt, and I'm sure Jeremy feels this way as well, I kind of feel like he was used as a scapegoat for a much larger problem in Tennessee. And I can see that if he feels that same way, I can see how he feels that he's been slighted and he wants to get back, you know, at the administration for you know, coaching a team that really believed in him for, you know, those couple of seasons there, and then just having it all crumble around you due to mistakes that occurred. You know, he's still playing, and you know, if he truly didn't have knowledge of what was going on and it was all going on behind his back, which I'm inclined to not believe, but it still could be possible. You know, why should you take a fall for something that's not your mistake and not your, you know, your cheating nature? When Phil Fulmer was first hired as the AD at Tennessee, you know, several years ago, gosh, I guess it was probably longer than several years ago, but a while back, I was immediately concerned with Tennessee because even though they are a rival, you know, you want at least this is my perspective. I want rivals to do well because it brings so much more to the rivalry game, and you want them to win every single game that they play except for the game that they play you, because that makes your team look a lot better. And it makes the rivalry game much more significant. At least that's how I see things. And when they first hired Phil Fulmer, you know, with his kind of legacy that he had in Knoxville, you know, he'd gotten into some interesting scenarios several times, and having him as an AD, I did not think was the best decision for Knoxville. And then look where it's gotten them. So, you know, it's a sticky situation. You know, I tweeted yesterday, you know, the whole like dumpster fire gif, you know, meanwhile in Knoxville and all that. But, you know, that's just something we've come to expect from this Tennessee team the past several years. And I hope they make it through it, because Lord knows, you know, it'd be nice to talk about a football game and not have to talk about, well, what's going on in the Tennessee administration this week.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to talk about a lot of teams in the SEC and it not be a foregone conclusion that Alabama's going to beat them, but instead that it's a competitive football game and Tennessee's in that space. But we still, like you said, we still have to mention something off the field that really doesn't pertain to this game or anybody on the Tennessee roster, for that matter. So getting back to the game, getting back to what's going to happen on the gridiron in Bryant-Denny Stadium Saturday night. What are your final thoughts on Bama, Tennessee, and a final prediction from you?
Well, Bama has won 14 straight. I don't need to say that on here, and they're going for their 15th. And the 12-10 victory in 2009 was kind of the only close game when over those years. At least this year's Tennessee team looks like it brings a little bit more ammunition to the table. But just the question for Alabama is just how sharply focused are they? They got everything back to normal against Mississippi State, and then was almost flawless at least early on against Ole Miss. They did have that struggle though against Texas A&M, which goes back to show their inconsistencies this year. Can Tennessee withstand an early punch? No, I don't think they can. I think it will cause a lot of problems. Tennessee is going to score enough though to keep Alabama pushing. I don't think Alabama's going to take their foot off the gas. But I think they are. I think Tennessee is going to turn the ball over more than once. And Bama leads the conference in turnover margin right now. And just as the running game takes over, fully in the second half and drains the clock out, I think Alabama's going to pull it away. So my final score prediction: I have Alabama 44, Tennessee 7.
You said 44-17?
Yeah.
Okay. You cut out a little bit there. All right, we got it. Joey Blackwell at Blackwell Sports on the Twitter account. Go check him out there. Read all about it at BamaCentral.com as well, the Sports Illustrated affiliate of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Joey, man, we always appreciate the time. Enjoy the game this weekend and enjoy that victory cigar as well. I'm sure you'll have the opportunity to get one.
Absolutely. Sounds good, Jacob. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Joey Blackwell helping us out. We'll head to a break and come back and talk about Jameson Williams and why you should enjoy his time here, because I don't think it's going to last very much longer, and for good reason. Here on Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports.
What makes AutoZone America's #1 battery destination? Because they offer free battery testing and charging and reliable replacement batteries. And they've always got your battery solution. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
Cash Call Mortgage is a DBA of Impact Mortgage Corp. NMLS ID 128231. Not all applicants will qualify. Equal housing lender. Not licensed in all states, including New York. Call 855-657-9910 for licensing terms and restrictions or visit cashcallmortgage.com. Economists predict interest rates could go up as early as November. That's not great news for people who've been putting off refinancing their mortgage. If your mortgage rate isn't in the 2s, let Cash Call Mortgage come to the rescue. Go to cashcallmortgage.com to see their rates or give Cash Call Mortgage a call and find out just how low your payment could be with a mortgage rate in the 2s. Interest rates could go up as early as next month. Don't miss this chance to get a low mortgage rate in the 2s. Imagine what you could do with that extra cash every month. For a free quote to see if you qualify, go to cashcallmortgage.com or call us today. Call 800-745-1952. That's 800-745-1952. 800-745-1952.
Everything is better at Benton Nissan. At Benton Nissan of Bessemer and Benton Nissan of Hoover, you get an even bigger selection. We have more than 400 used cars on the ground. Don't pay above sticker for new cars when we have like-new used cars waiting for you. Drive a little, save a lot at Benton Nissan of Bessemer, 5487 Academy Way, and Benton Nissan of Hoover, 1640 Montgomery Highway. Benton Nissan, your friend in the car business. For qualified customers, see dealer for details. Everything is better at Benton Nissan.
Tuscaloosa Tire and Service, they've got the big brands you know and trust. Goodyear, Firestone, Bridgestone, Cooper, and they can finance for you as well. When you need routine maintenance and alignment, a tune-up, whatever it is, belts, hoses, just basic stuff, or when you don't know what's wrong with your car, truck, or SUV, make it Tuscaloosa Tire and Service. They're dependable, they're trustworthy. That's why they've lasted for over 36 years. Skyland Boulevard, McFarland Boulevard East in Northport on Lurleen Wallace Boulevard. Check out the website, TuscaloosaTireandService.com.
Cash Call Mortgage is a DBA of Impact Mortgage Corp. NMLS ID 128231. Not all applicants will qualify. Equal housing lender. Not licensed in all states, including New York. Call 855-657-9910 for licensing terms and restrictions or visit cashcallmortgage.com. Economists predict interest rates could go up as early as November. That's not great news for people who've been putting off refinancing their mortgage. If your mortgage rate isn't in the 2s, let Cash Call Mortgage come to the rescue. Go to cashcallmortgage.com to see their rates or give Cash Call Mortgage a call and find out just how low your payment could be with a mortgage rate in the 2s. Interest rates could go up as early as next month. Don't miss this chance to get a low mortgage rate in the 2s. Imagine what you could do with that extra cash every month. For a free quote to see if you qualify, go to cashcallmortgage.com or call us today. Call 800-745-1952. That's 800-745-1952. 800-745-1952.
Everything is better at Benton Nissan. At Benton Nissan of Bessemer and Benton Nissan of Hoover, you get an even bigger selection. We have more than 400 used cars on the ground. Don't pay above sticker for new cars when we have like-new used cars waiting for you. Drive a little, save a lot at Benton Nissan of Bessemer, 5487 Academy Way, and Benton Nissan of Hoover, 1640 Montgomery Highway. Benton Nissan, your friend in the car business. For qualified customers, see dealer for details. Everything is better at Benton Nissan.
Tuscaloosa Tire and Service, they've got the big brands you know and trust. Goodyear, Firestone, Bridgestone, Cooper, and they can finance for you as well. When you need routine maintenance and alignment, a tune-up, whatever it is, belts, hoses, just basic stuff, or when you don't know what's wrong with your car, truck, or SUV, make it Tuscaloosa Tire and Service. They're dependable, they're trustworthy. That's why they've lasted for over 36 years. Skyland Boulevard, McFarland Boulevard East in Northport on Lurleen Wallace Boulevard. Check out the website, TuscaloosaTireandService.com.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Mostly cloudy this afternoon. We'll maintain the chance of a few passing showers and thunderstorms through the evening hours. The high today 78, tonight's low 52. Tomorrow and Saturday, the sky's sunny both days. The high tomorrow 76, the high Saturday 79. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 76 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
You're listening to Off the Edge on Tide 100.9.
We're back here on Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. Have you enjoyed your time with Jameson Williams? I hope you have. He's been pretty productive, right? 29 receptions, 587 yards, 6 touchdowns, plus the 2 kickoff returns per touchdowns, which, by the way, is a school record. Not just in a game, but in a career. 2 kickoff return touchdowns. Christian Jones is one of the most fantastic kickoff return specialists that Alabama's ever had. He only had 2. You know, it's shocking that, you know, guys like David Palmer and Kenyon Drake and a lot of other guys that had a lot of excitement to them didn't have those kind of stats too, but that's the case. Right? Christian Jones used to own that stat, and now he shares it with Jameson Williams. And, you know, Jameson almost took one back against Texas A&M, or excuse me, Mississippi State. There's a good shot that he could leave with that record by the end of the year. And yeah, you heard me say leave. This may be a forgotten thing with Jameson Williams, but he is a third-year player. He is a junior. And despite coming into the season without a lot of draft, you know, noise surrounding him, that had a lot to do with the fact that he only had 15 catches and 3 touchdowns at Ohio State. Just not enough sample size. Well, almost 30 receptions later and 8 touchdowns later, there's reason to be excited about the guy, and there's reason to expect him to possibly be a first-round pick. Now, that's nothing but a good thing for him, and it's really a good thing for Alabama, because outside of Evan Neal, you're not looking at any first-round picks for Alabama. You're going to have to get really lucky on John Mechie, and now with Jameson Williams kind of getting into that stratosphere, you can see it on a lot of on a lot of outlets that focus on the NFL draft. Okay. Now one of the most respected ones, one of my favorite ones, that's the Draft Network, and they put out an article this morning: 5 players with the best chance to crack their top 100, big board. And the first name on the list is Jameson Williams, and that's what kind of inspired me to go down this route. But for the past couple of weeks, I've been in this state where, if you take Bryce Young and Will Anderson out of the equation, how many first round draft picks are on this football team? And heading into the season, it was like, okay, well, you got Evan Neal, you got Jaleel Billingsley, you got Christian Harris. If Henry Toto's as good as they say, you got him, you got John Mechie. Maybe Emil Ekiyor can work himself into that. Maybe Jordan Battle can work himself into that. Maybe Josh Jobe. I just named off 8 guys. But we get halfway through the season, and you're really down to 1. And that's Evan Neal. But quickly getting into that conversation is Jameson Williams. And if I have to, I'll remind you now, while he's had a slower start to his NFL career, Henry Ruggs was the first wide receiver taken in his NFL draft class. Not Jerry Jeudy, who is the better route runner, not CeeDee Lamb, who is arguably the better overall receiver. It was Henry Ruggs. Now, it's the Las Vegas Raiders. They have an obsession with Alabama football players. In case you did not know, they signed DJ Fluker to their practice squad over the weekend. They also signed another Alabama alum. They already have the most Alabama alumni. Mike Mayock, what I'm trying to say, you have an obsession and you need to see a therapist because team's not good enough to replicate all the Alabama talent that you have. It's annoying. You're the second team in a generation to have a surplus of Alabama talent and it not translate to success. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Washington football team did that one first. Come up with a new strategy, I guess. But for Jameson Williams, now, if the draft was tomorrow, he probably would not be a first-round pick. Hence, he probably would not leave. But we're talking about a guy that's got 9 more games left in him, most likely, if you count a possible national championship. Now, that's thinking very much into the future. But when you've got speed like him, and not just speed, okay? Now, listen, a lot of criticism for Henry Ruggs was that he caught a lot of slant passes and then just outran everybody. And that's partially true. With Jameson Williams, you see yak ability, like real yak ability, yards after the catch, that is. He creates opportunities for himself. He breaks tackles. Like he said, man, every time he gets the ball, he's just trying to crib. He's just trying to get to the house. He's just trying to score points, and he's done it 8 times this year because of that mentality. And what I like, when I evaluate players, I look for that mentality, that winning mentality. I think it plays so much more of a role than how pro ready they are or what certain attributes there are. I gave Jalen Hurts a bump into the first round simply because of that. I look at guys like Josh Rosen and take away from that because you don't get the opportunity to see it. For Jameson Williams, that exists. His versatility, his size, his speed, the winning mentality. He runs more than just 5 routes. He runs more than just go routes. He's useful. And he's somebody that is in contention to be one of the, if not the first wide receiver selected in next year's draft. And if that's the case, you only get 1 year with number 1. And I know that would be slightly disappointing because of how absolutely electric he is. I would love to get 2 years of Jameson Williams. And considering that I think that next year's Alabama team will not only be better, but have an easier schedule in the regular season than this year's Alabama Crimson Tide team, it would have been, I say it would have. He's not gone yet. It would be a lot more fun to see him in a year 2 with Bryce Young. But the nature of being Alabama is that you've got to reload a little bit quicker than everybody else. You've got to have quick turnarounds in your wide receiver rooms. You got to have quick turnarounds pretty much everywhere. And it's probably going to be the case here with Jameson Williams. I'm just saying, enjoy him while you got him, because I don't think you'll have him next year. Now, tomorrow, what we'll do tomorrow will be a lot of opportunity for phone calls, and we'll also break down Tennessee's defense a little bit more. I think Tennessee's defense is feisty, and I mean that in a good way. Like, statistically, they're like below average in the SEC. Like, they're ranked like 8th in yards and 6th in turnovers, and but they get a lot of sacks, and they do create a lot of turnovers. It's just the teams ahead of them are creating more. And I think when I dive into the film a little bit more, I'm going to see a defense that might be able to challenge Alabama. Because if you're feisty enough that you're able to like stop the running game, if you're feisty enough to get after Bryce Young and really rush the passer, and on the offensive side of the ball, you run the ball, and like Joey Blackwell said, you use a little up tempo, then you got a real shot to win. And I've got a feeling that this game is going to be close. Now, I don't know I haven't settled on a score prediction for tomorrow yet. I haven't really gotten to that stage yet, but I feel like we might be in store for a good football game. Some of that may be predicated on whether or not Hendon Hooker, the quarterback for Tennessee, plays. But maybe with him practicing, maybe he goes in some capacity and they use Milton as a reserve option that can kind of come in and create other opportunities for that volunteer offense. I think it's going to be a little bit of fun. Maybe a little bit stressful for other folks, but as far as good games go, I think it'll be a little bit fun. Jay Barker Show is up next. Ryan Fowler is on location from 2 until 6 at R&R Cigars, the downtown mansion location. I'll be there with him hanging out as well, so you can come by and say hey to us and pick up your victory cigars ahead of the third, not really Saturday in October. I'm Jacob Harrison. Y'all take it easy and roll tide.
Thank you for listening to Off the Edge.
Can't tell you how proud I am of our players, our team.
Join us every Monday from 8 to 10 and Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. on Tide 100.9 and the Tide 100.9 app.